Believe it or not, I'm interviewing again. I never thought I would feel so questiony. Asking away on a wing and no prayer. Who could it be? Believe it or not, it's just me and Trevor.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome to the Zachrilege cast. Trevor Poelman, how is it going? I love having people
It's
from
going
the
so
north
great. Oh
because they
yeah.
can say A and apologize for everything, and
Yeah.
because that's what you are. I'm sorry, that's just the truth.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Yeah. I got yelled at a bus stop once for saying I'm sorry too much. It's like, oh, sorry, just trying to. Oh, sorry. And this guy's obviously an American guy. He's like, you Canadians.
I know. I was like, who's yelling at you?
Yeah.
Anyway, the official beers this episode: Backwoods Bastard and
Nice.
Dragon's Milk, and transferred to glasses.
Perfect.
Okay, so
Well,
I hear that. And what do you have?
oh, I have a Canadian Pilsner. Whoops, there's my camera. But I thought for you, I'd put it in a American beer glass.
I saw the Lone Star. Oh, I love that.
Perfect.
So, is it true that you and your cat use different bathrooms?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, he's got his own little room, and then I got my my bathroom. Although he's annoying when I go to the bathroom, like he's right there. People tell me I should just shut the door and that'll solve the problem, but he has to be like right there when I'm using the bathroom. So
Yeah. What is it about? I feel like this is a cat, like a low hanging fruit, like stand up comic kind of line. But it's like, what's the deal with cats and bathrooms? Because like you go to the bathroom and if you close the door, they're coming in. And then when you're cleaning their box, they're like watching like, oh boy, I can't wait for you to finish so I can, dirty it all up.
Yeah,
That's all they're all about.
Yep.
They're so much fun.
Yeah.
So Trevor, can you tell the audience about your own religious background?
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's see. So I grew up. So my family is Dutch, as some of you may tell by my last name. And we grew up Christian Reform, which is a very Dutch thing to do. And then when I was 6, my dad decided to leave the church we were at, and we joined a church called the Standard Church, which is like from the Holiness movement, started by a guy named R.C. Horner in the the early 1900s. And it's kind of your basic evangelical church. It's like a non-denominational church now. And grew up there, and then I went to Bible college to become a youth pastor. Did that for a couple years, and then eventually became the heathen that I am.
I don't know if you have the requisite like expensive genes to be a youth pastor, so you might not qualify for that.
Yeah.
There's like a certain look that you have to have. I'm intrigued because it's like after all this time and how many different sects of Christianity, I don't know if I've heard of Christian Reform or Standard Church. When did this reform happen? Like, was this like in the like kind of 19th century? Because there was a bunch of
or
Christian
like
sects that started in that area.
They're the Christian Reform, some of them are called Dutch Reform, some of them are called Canadian Reform, and then there's just the CRC, which is the Christian Reformed Church. But that's from Calvin, directly, like John Calvin is the best kind of thing. So they're very much like predestination, and what else do I remember from that? I just remember like the reason we left was because my dad was kind of sick my whole life, and he had osteo and rheumatoid arthritis, and he missed like 3 or 4 weeks in a row of going to church. And so we got a call from the consistory, which is like the elders, and to tell him that, hey, we're coming over. And he thought it was to see how he was doing, to see why he was missing church and stuff like that, and if there's anything they could do to help. But it was because my sister was seen going into a store on a Sunday, and they wanted to know what he was going to do to discipline her. So that's when we left and joined this other church.
I feel like Canadian Christians would be really good because you're supposed to be like apologizing to God all the time. So
exactly.
You're like, the head of the game. Maybe if they did a 10 Commandments with hockey involved, and we can make some Tim Hortons joke, and we got the trifecta going. It's all perfect.
Exactly.
But what got you out? I mean, you were in long enough to go to like a Bible college, so that was a pretty long time.
Yeah, it was a slow process out of it. It starts with like little questions, and then they go into bigger questions, and you start to like, I was involved in like progressive Christianity and stuff like that. So it was like, I thought that was okay, because all my struggles were with like, why do we marginalize so many people? And then, so if I walk away and go to an LGBTQ affirming church and I do that kind of stuff, then okay, I don't have that like, those questions anymore. But then I still like couldn't just make myself believe this stuff anymore. So eventually kind of had to grapple with my own with my own doubt and face it head first. And one story I tell quite often is, it was kind of the tipping point where it's like right near the end, and I was talking to a family member, and I was they were complaining about gay marriage or something like that, and I was like, no, I don't think it's a sin to be gay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. How could it be a sin to be who you are? And they responded with, well, if you're going to throw a part of the Bible, you might as well throw out the whole Bible. And within a week, I
You're
was
like,
yeah,
interesting idea.
yeah, good call. And it was pretty much that week that I was like, no, I don't believe anymore. So
I mean, the whole thing about Christianity is like being yourself, which is being like a human being, like let
yeah,
alone like the whole like shooting that happened near me pretty recently was
yeah,
because this guy was like in sex addiction, because the church was like, oh, you have normal sexual urges, so there's something wrong with you, and that like led to someone deciding to kill a bunch of people. And it's like, just being a human being is wrong.
yeah,
And let alone, it's like, well, can you have other people that you can consider lesser? And it's like, well, we'll go after gay people, and it's like, well, gay people are kind of okay now, trans people. So there's
exactly.
like always a different level. But there's a a long distance between like, okay, I'm an atheist, and hey, let me start doing an atheist show. So what was the whole idea behind the Believe It or Not show
Yeah.
title and starting the podcast?
Well, the title was created by Damien, my co-host. He came up with that. We were just brainstorming ideas, and he's like, "What about this?" And I was like, "Love it." Like you were saying earlier, I didn't think about the Googleability of it. It is harder to Google.
Me neither.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons too why I'm like, every time I make a video, I'm like, "Hey, I'm Trevor Poelman," and I put like "by Trevor Poelman," because I'm like, well, that might be something that's like easier to Google and find it. But yeah, it's so he came up with the name, but it was basically, I was doing a comedy podcast with a buddy of mine, and it was kind of nearing the end. It was kind of we're like, okay, we're going to do 100 episodes, and that'll be it. And I knew I wanted to keep podcasting, but I wasn't sure what to podcast about, because I was like, we should probably just have a topic instead of just talking about whatever comes to our mind that day. So I was listening to atheist podcasts, and I was like, I'll do that. And it was also gave me an opportunity to research stuff that I was too lazy to research, that I always kind of wondered about. So I was like, okay, well, I'll talk about a different topic every week, and I'll Google it, and we'll talk about what I Googled. And yeah, we put in the description every week too that it's we just Google this stuff. Like we are not experts, and we used to say that on the show as well, because like we're just two dummies who Google, or I Google, and Damien's like just left flabbergasted at how crazy religion is, because he didn't grow up in it at all, and so he's always like, "What the hell? Are you serious?" But, yeah.
Well, I will give you bonus points for like podcasting from a basement, but I also will say, if you podcast and you actually don't act like you know everything and you're like an expert, I don't know, but that's it's a theoretically an atheist thing to say. We can say we don't know.
Yeah, it's true.
Which doesn't automatically mean whatever argument against us is happening is true. That's just the case. And there's Chris showing up on the chat to say a boot. You don't have to say it. It's But have you always, since you started, you've been going the YouTube route?
Yeah, I figured, because the other podcast, we didn't put up our episodes on YouTube. We also did like sketches and stuff, and we would do that and put that on YouTube. But with this one, I was like, well, I'll throw it up on YouTube, and then I've been doing video editing for a long time, so I was like, okay, it'll boost in the algorithm if there's movement on the screen instead of just like YouTube, classic, just a picture of your podcast and then whatever. And I was like, okay, well then, so I'll just find some movie clips or something like that and put it in the background based on what we're talking about. So yeah, I've been doing that since day one. But the video essays is a newer thing that I've been doing.
Well, what is the format for like a typical, believe it or not, podcast episode?
Yeah. So basically, it depends on whether we're doing just like one topic and I'm like, okay, this is an event that happened in 1865 or whatever. Let's talk about this. So then I'll just go through that. But usually, and then we have like list episodes where it's like the most recent one about gender is like, okay, here's a bunch of things that the church has done or said about gender and people's reaction to it and all that stuff. But yeah, it usually just starts out, we say, hey, what's going on? And then I talk at Damien for like half an hour or so. And he just keeps saying like, what the hell, are you serious? And then we usually do a Christian rock lyric or God's Law at the end. So we'll walk through a terrible Christian rock lyric or like a terrible Bible verse or like, just something that is funny or weird about religion in general. So yeah, usually like a little segment at the end.
Well, when I was leading into this episode, I was thinking of doing, like a parody of a Christian rock song, based on, what you do on your show. But the problem is like Christian rock is kind of like a parody of good music. So it was hard to do.
Yeah.
So there's an episode where you were talking about a Newsboys song. So what are your thoughts? Because you were like someone who used to really like them, and now, well, you might have a different thought.
Yeah.
But what is it about the Bible saying there's no breakfast in hell?
Yeah. Well, I don't know where they found that in the Bible.
Breakfast.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like there's not even like just they put out some stale muffins or something like that. It's just no breakfast, and I don't see that in the Bible. The Bible doesn't really say much of anything, if anything, about hell besides like a couple like spots in the New Testament. But yeah, nothing about breakfast. But or what? Well, I guess there is a story about a guy in hell who is thirsty and he asks a guy in heaven for some water. So maybe that's where they're getting it from. I don't know, but but it's a catchy song. I don't know, it's not the most catchy. But I loved the Newsboys, especially that album, the Take Me to Your Leader. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I saw them like live a couple times when that album was out, and just like I was so excited when I got to touch the arm of one of the guys in the band. So so I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And now they're in God's Not Dead movies, and they're basically a different band. Like I think one guy's the same.
It seems like there were all these Christian bands, but yeah, the Christian movies are really taken over. But we'll get to that shortly. So you usually cover a subject. Do you have like a list of subjects that you're going to cover for a while, and then when you like initially come up with it, is you're doing research, you're like, oh, this is fun, or oh man, why did I pick this?
Yeah, that's definitely happens. And I've had it where I've scrapped an idea halfway through because I'm like, either there's not enough or I'm going to be too angry and I'm not ready for it, or like, stuff like that. Like fundamentalist Mormons basically is one that I have my notes for, but every time I go to do it, I just get so angry, and I'm like, because it's just so abusive. I'm like, I'm not in a place emotionally right now where I can do this topic. I eventually will, but yeah, I have just like a list of topics I want to hit, and then every once in a while something will come to my mind, and I'll like add it in there, and then eventually I'm like, okay, let's see if the time to tackle this. Like the John 3:16 one was one where that was from day one. I've had that on the list. But that's like that John 3:16 guy. But like, I thought it would just be a quick story to tell within a list of other interesting stories. But then the more I researched it, I'm like, oh no, this is like completely nuts. Like this is an episode on its own. So
yeah, what was it like? Because that was one of the episodes I saw all the way through, and there was a lot more to the guy than just the dude who showed up on camera. Like, what made you like decide to do the show, and like what are some things like you discovered about him as you're researching?
Yeah, so like well, he didn't like sports. That was a surprising one. He was like not really a sports fan at all. He just liked the attention he got from going to these games and getting on TV, and then just like the mental illness and getting arrested and serving 3 life sentences. Wasn't aware of that all happening. So holding people hostage, and the story took some crazy turns that I just wasn't expecting as I was reading about him. So I just interesting guy, and then that took us on a tangent too about the legal system, and like this guy is obviously, he's got some issues and he needs help more than he needs to just be locked away till he dies. But so.
And he predicted the end of the world too.
Yeah, he was all about the rapture. That's why he took the hostages, was because he thought the rapture was going to happen like next week, and he needed help, basically getting the word out there. So he wanted the news outlets to come in and spread the word. Yeah.
Do you think if Christianity exists until like the end of humanity, will people still be waiting for the end times until the end? Because it's always like, you always want to be like, hey, I'm living in the generation where it's supposed to happen, where that was supposed to be like the first people who believe in Christianity were supposed to be alive when it happened. And it's 2,000 years later and it still hasn't, but people are still very sure that it's going to happen, and they predict it all the time.
Yeah, I think as long as there's Christianity, there's going to be people picking dates for when the rapture is going to happen, and buying billboards or whatever predicting that the rapture is going to happen. I think it's just going to keep going. It's been going for 2,000 years, and I don't see it slowing down. It's crazy.
Did you have fun picking like the audio clips that you use at the opening of the podcast?
Yeah. Well, the first few episodes, I think the first like 10, I used movie clips where they mentioned God, and then I was like, okay, well maybe I should switch to actually being what the topic is. Like obviously we talk about God, but I'll take preachers, and that was fun to find which ones work together well and stuff like that. And it's also fun having people trying to guess who each of them are and see how many of the preachers they can name in the intro. But nobody ever gets the last one because it's not a preacher, it's a famous pop star. But the part of where it's like I just like seeing people worship, praising God. That's Justin Bieber talking with his cool youth pastors or whatever at a conference. So
Justin Bieber, another thing you can blame Canada for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So do we have the first American Great Awakening to blame for today's theatrical preachers? Like the whole concept of that, like people being more fiery and being able to worship in different ways in like the early times of America?
Yeah, I think so. I think that has a lot to do with it. And the fact too that there's still tent revivals, and the fact that nobody has found irony in the use of the word revival anymore. I think a lot of that just goes back to the Great Awakening, and trying to bring a new Great Awakening in, and those even like street preachers and stuff, and the way they like handle themselves and the way they scream at you. I think a lot of that, definitely goes back to the Great Awakening.
How many Great Awakenings have we had? I feel like we've had at least 2, but it seems like now there might be a new one every 2 weeks.
Yeah, there's been 2 that have been called that, and then I think a lot of the, like different denominations and movements will have their own kind of pinpoint where they say this was their Great Awakening, like Azusa Street for the Pentecostals and things like that, where their big kind of moment where they started and finally saw the way Christianity was supposed to be. We finally figured it out. And everybody has their own little movements when that happened.
Is there like a difference between like the American version of like a Great Awakening versus Canadian? Because like Canadian, in theory, Canada is connected to England, which has their own church, but it's not really the case in Canada.
Yeah, because in Canada, we have the Anglican Church where you guys are with the Episcopalian, and it's kind of the same idea, but it's that Church of England. But I mean, the holiness movement really affected Canada, like really affected like upstate New York, but also Ontario and Quebec. So that's where my home church that I grew up in came from. And that was, I think, a huge impact on Canada and the US in a lot of ways. And then, just different movements throughout, like when a lot of Mennonites migrated to Alberta and Saskatchewan. I think that's affected the kind of the conservative mindset that is so prevalent there. And that kind of, God first kind of idea. And I mean, they have a lot of their own denominations and movements too out west, like depending on the region and stuff. But yeah, like for instance, what's the church? I think it's called the Alliance Church. When I was applying for churches after Bible college, they actually make you sign something saying that you agree with the way they believe the rapture will happen. Like that's a tenet of like working in one of their churches, which I always find it funny when like,
Wait, so did they have a date for that?
No, they didn't have a date, but it was like, that pre-tribulation versus.
I mean, it's yeah. People take the Bible very literally, and it's like, doesn't it say in the Bible that no one knows? Like even Jesus didn't know when it was going to happen. And this guy's like, was Harold Camping, and there have been plenty of other ones, but he was the one that, like, in the early days of me finding the atheist community, was like, he was saying it's going to happen on this day, and then didn't happen. Well, that was the spiritual end. You get one get out of jail free version, and then you move over. Yeah, and I figured that whole burned over district, which was in the 19th century. If it's in upper New York, then Canada's not far away, and we didn't have like really strict borders back in the day. So those people probably cross the border all the time to see each other. So what?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, because I grew up in a small town near the border, and I had friends who would go to the States every Sunday for church, or back and forth. We would have people that would come to our church from the States, and it's kind of that intermingling, like country doesn't matter. It's what church you want to go to kind of thing.
True.
Yeah.
So what don't you lose when you lose your faith?
You don't lose your sense of morality, or just you don't want to go out and murder people, at least. What else did I talk about? You don't have to be sad. You don't have to lose a sense of meaning. Yeah. I think that's the crib note version. Your life doesn't end basically when you leave your faith, which a lot of people are kind of afraid that's what's going to happen.
Well, do you find, as someone has a pretty extensive audience for your episodes now on your YouTube channel, do you get a decent amount of Christians asking you questions, or are you mostly finding like-minded people, at least in terms of being atheists?
No, it's been crazy, the amount of emails and private messages I've got from people deconstructing and just not sure, and just not sure where they stand on it, and thanking me for putting things in perspective or asking for advice and stuff. It's been almost humbling to know that I have that kind of impact on people. It's been crazy. But obviously also emails of but have you heard of C.S. Lewis? Things like that, or just
guessing you probably have.
Yeah.
Do you get any presuppositionalists? I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. I got in an argument with a friend of mine who was just throwing out the old, apologetic tropes or whatever. I'm like, first of all, I've obviously heard this stuff before. I've probably used some of this stuff before. I don't know why now you think this is going to work on me. It's just, But, But I just don't argue with apologetics anymore. I don't have a desire to engage in that. I mean, they can easily Google how wrong they are. I'm not going to be convinced. They're not going to be convinced. But yeah,
it takes a certain kind of stomach to want to do debate, because you're not really, it's always you're not really debating, because I feel like there would be, hey, I have this apologist argument, and be like, okay, here's why it's wrong, and then it'd be done forever. But it's not done forever. No. If someone can present it in a certain way, they're gonna get it to go. I mean, the thing that interested me when you mentioned the Great Awakening is it made me think, I think that was the first time period when people were actually able to read the Bible. And that's why at that time, the first like kind of free thinkers who actually made some impact in the culture appeared, who were like, yeah, I've read, now that I get to read the book, I'm like, oh, this is the thing people said for 1800 years has been amazing. And then you're like, oh, I've actually read it. And it's, it's written by people. How about that?
Yeah.
And that's how
Exactly.
it kind of turns up. But what made you decide, to do that episode or the video where you did kind of it was like a Truman Show kind of themed episode?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that one I had the idea for the actual like things I wanted to talk about, kind of floating around. I had a bunch of notes for it. I had a bunch of clips that I had chose, but I wasn't sure how to tie it all together. And then I was like just going through some YouTube clips and I saw one of the Truman Show. I was like, duh, like this is an exact parallel. So that kind of put it together really quick. It went from like this idea and I'm not sure what I'm going to do to like having it done in like a couple days because it had such a through line with the Truman Show. So yeah, and that was fun to go back and watch that because I hadn't seen that movie in forever too. So
yeah, Jim Carrey, Canadian. Yeah, that was a guy I definitely bought stock in early in his career, and he did well. I don't know. He's kind of a little kooky now, but he's living his real life because he is. Now, you said you like to do video clips, so when you do a video, and really check out the Wait, Don't You Lose When You Lose Your Faith episode, because there's so many clips. Like when you do that, how like strict you have to be when you're kind of putting it together, because you have to make like the audio and the video match up.
Yeah, well, yeah, because what I do is I'll grab all the clips. I have an outline of what I want the video to be, and then I grab all the clips, put them together, and then I write my narration around that so that it kind of flows in and stuff like that. And then quite often I'll be like, it's the middle of the night and I think of a line I want to add in to make fun of one of the preachers or whatever. So I'll like get up and record that line really quick and then add it in. So it's like, it's kind of loose in how I do it. But yeah, that's kind of normally the way I do it. And then I work from home, so I'm usually writing a script while I'm in between calls or whatever, and just doing that stuff, recording it and throwing it all together. And then YouTube demonetizes it because I have too many clips, and we go from there.
Well, how often does like a podcast episode come out versus like how long does it take you to put together like a video essay?
Yeah, well, we've been doing the podcast every 2 weeks now for a couple of years, and the video essay I've been trying to do on the opposite Sunday of when the podcast comes out, but it has never yet come out. But yeah, it's about 2 weeks each, like between the videos and between the podcasts. Videos, I want to get them out more. I want to, start doing them at a kind of a higher volume, but yeah, it takes time and I'm working full time and things like that too. So, and sometimes, you just need that creative spark, like the Truman Show thing, where it's like, I knew what I wanted the video to say, but I wasn't sure how to say it. And sometimes you just need that like kind of inspiration to get it to that next step.
Well, you mentioned that you knew a lawyer in Florida. Deborah just joined. She lives in the Orlando area, so I didn't know if that was the same part of the state or not.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, I have a lawyer friend in Florida. Is she watching? Yeah, she's a defense attorney or a public defender, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, well, Deborah's not a lawyer, although I think she's done enough to do the bar. She's really into legal everything. So anytime she wants to start talking about legal stuff, I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm just not as into the legal stuff as you are. But it's it was interesting that you had that contact. Always making these connections. It's very important to do that.
Yeah.
Create these kind of community. So when you did your video, you had a lot of clips of movies, but you also had a lot of preachers on there. Mm-hmm. Do you have like favorite preachers where you're actually starting to dig their style?
Well, I wouldn't say favorite. Because I'm on the phone all day too, I've noticed that I've picked up mannerisms of how I say certain things from some of the preachers, especially like when I'm closing a sale. I feel like it does help to have that like preacher voice, that reassuring preacher voice. But I don't like that about me. Like I don't like that I'm learning from them. But I have a favorite to hate, and that would be Stephen Furtick. Like he annoys the crap out of me.
Funny, that was the name that I wrote down just because he was the preacher who like wore the really like probably the $200 jeans.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I'm the guy, I'm the cool guy, I'm wearing jeans. Yeah.
Yeah. And he always has these like little sayings how he starts off his sermons, and they're always like really bad. Like, just you say one word and then you flip that sentence to make it say the opposite, and that he's all of a sudden said something really wise, and it's like, no, that's like something a terrible film writer would do. Like, it's not a wise statement you just made, but the audience just loves him. It's like a cult of personality there too, and they just like freak out anytime he says anything.
Yeah, it's yeah, there's a certain kind of definite personality that needs to do that, because they do these like web shows and then they have maybe thousands of people in the audience with them, and it's like it's something else to see. Like, I had a friend take me to a church a few years ago, and I went, and it was one of those ones where the guy was in the center and the crowd was all around, and they had the full band, and I'm like, this is like an entertainment spectacle. Like, this isn't.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got anything out of the actual like lecture. It was just like, this is an experience. Like, they're not just going for, I don't know, they're going for something different. But yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the most interesting things when you find shows that have been monetized, and I think it's like when you get to 1,000 subscribers, that's when you get to it. But any atheist content that lives on YouTube that is monetized, you could probably do a video. I mean, I'm giving you ideas. You already have plenty about the kind of ads that show up on yours, because it's never like progressive anything. It's always like, Jesus is real, and let me show you why.
Yeah.
Or well, Pure Flicks.
Yeah, it's all Pure Flicks, Bible colleges. It's all Christian stuff, and that's I get messages about that all the time too. And because I'm new to the game and I've never been like had the option to have ads, I didn't know that you had to go through and like check how many ads were on each video. Like, you can actually like go in there and put that. So I had one video, I didn't know it had 7 ads in it. So I was getting complaints about the ads. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's YouTube. And then I looked, and like, no, that's me. I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah, the YouTube video, like, it used to be 1 at the beginning, and then now there's at least 2 at the beginning, and someone will be in the middle of a sentence on their video and they'll go to an ad.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. I mean, they're trying to sell their premium version, almost don't blame them for that. But at the same time, it's like, if you're making any money off of YouTube, they're probably making 5 times as much. And it's just like, yeah, I don't think you get any choice to like what kind of videos that show up, because those are the people who have money. Isn't it weird that the people on the Christian conservatives have money? I wonder what that's all about.
Where'd they get that?
Strange. I thought Jesus said money is bad and we're supposed to be poor.
Yeah.
Apparently that wasn't.
That reminds me of one time I knew a guy who would always post stuff. And this was when I was still a Christian, but like more progressive. And he would always post stuff about like gay marriage and things like that, where he wanted, the government to have more control over people's lives. And then he posted something about how against welfare. And I made a comment. I just put a Bible verse in there about feeding the poor. And he's like, yeah, but that's up to us to do. It's not up to the government. I was like, oh, so you don't want the government to be influenced by the Bible, or do you? Like, there's that like disconnect where it's
it kind of depends. Like, you think people like want to have a theocracy, but it's like, if you have a theocracy, you're gonna have to pick a flavor of the Bible, and it's probably gonna end up being like Mormonism or it's gonna be like our own government. It's gonna be like some weird compromise, and it's not gonna be anything that's gonna make anybody happy in the end.
Yeah.
But people don't really think of that. It's like, yeah, no, it's good that you should have your religion and you should have your government. It should be separate. Like, it's mostly religious people who are like, yeah, separation of church and state is good. The people who say it's bad are the ones that want their version to be in charge. And when it happens, it's not going to be their version. And they're going to be like, oh, crap, I didn't think this through all the way.
I didn't mean this. Yeah, exactly.
Now, I can't do an interview without giving like a softball question. So, are tuxedo cats the best?
They are the best. Number one, I love my cat. I adopted him during the pandemic, but I'd been wanting a cat for a long time, and it was the best decision. that I've ever made. Living by myself in an apartment and working from home. Yeah, it's nice to have him around. I love it. You have 2 tuxedo cats, right?
Yeah, when you have cats and you work from home, you realize, oh my God, they really do nap that much every day.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
so mine had like a window. It's like in the morning, I'll have calls like between 9 and 11, and that's when the cats are awake. And if your door is closed and you're on a call, they come in and they want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And then after about noon, it's pretty much nap time until dinner at 5, and they come hang out a bit. But for the most part, yeah, it's not hanging out. See, I think they might like the cat more than you, but it's okay, monetize your cat. That's
Exactly.
That's what we're all hoping for.
Yeah, and yeah, he loves attention, and he loves to get super hyper as soon as I start recording. And my apartment's so loud too, with like the furnace and stuff, that I try to like time my recording around that, but I can't time it around him. He's just like, he just loves to be annoying. Even as soon as I connected with you, he pulled the mic down and it went on the floor.
Yeah, they know it. They let you know who's in charge really quickly.
Yeah.
So I have to do another kind of Canadian question. Can you take Ted Cruz back?
Oh yeah. But who do we trade him for? No, we can't take Ted Cruz back. I spoke too soon. Like, I was gonna say I don't think he'd get elected here, but no, he totally would have. Yeah, with the people we have in office, yeah, he would.
So why are the worst politicians we have like not in any way from that? Like Ted Cruz is from Canada, but he's like, I'm Texas. Josh Hawley's like, I'm a Missouri guy. It's like, dude, you went to an Ivy League school. Stop acting like you're a man of the people. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, not from just north of where I live. Oh god, I live in Georgia. Like, we were like, hey, Georgia, we helped get Biden elected, and we got the 2 senators. And then it's like, oh yeah, we have a super majority Republican. Anyway, all about that. But what's it like having? So Doug Ford, is he the premier?
He's the premier. Yeah,
oh my goodness.
He just called another lockdown today for.
Wait, they don't do that. Oh wait, so what's the party? So it was like the Progressive Conservatives. I was just intrigued by other countries, like what they call their political parties and then what they actually are.
Yeah, and there's nothing progressive about the Progressive Conservatives. They're just conservative. I don't even. Are they still called progressive, or they might have just gone back to conservative?
You might as well.
Yeah, I think they are. But yeah, and then we have like stuff like the United Conservative Party, and like when I was younger, there was the Heritage Party or the Christian Heritage Party or something like that, which might still be around. And they're the ones that are like, we're a Christian nation, and they only ever. I don't know how many seats they ever had, but yeah. So there's a few liberal parties and there's a few conservative parties, but yeah, we're less of a 2-party system than you guys, but also we've only had 2 parties that have actually been in charge. So it's still kind of a 2-party system. So.
Seems like that's the only way it can go. So why is it that religious people struggle with like gender identity and how anyone can think other than like a 2-party system, a 2-gender world?
Yeah, I don't. It's finding a way to justify your bigotry. It's like because I guess the Bible says that men can't wear women's clothes and women, but it's like, well, they're still. That's a dumb rule anyway. But it's like, well, that's not who they are. That's a woman. Just because they were born with a penis doesn't mean they're not a woman. But they just can't get their head around that. And just any way to justify your bigotry. And we talked about it on the podcast too, how there's people who aren't even that religious, or aren't even religious at all, who find a way to justify their bigotry when it comes to gender and say it has to do with science and things like that. And people just want to dislike the other and are afraid of people just suck. I don't know.
I mean, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So speaking of the culture wars, are you using your massive audience to help you get the money so you can buy those little the Satan shoes?
Oh, I mean, that'd be cool. I love how outraged people are about it. and like, yeah,
People get mad about the devil, and then it's like he's like, "Oh, I'm doing a video where I'm like killing the devil," and they're still like mad at him.
still
And
mad about, yeah,
do you guys know what the devil is? Like, he's the bad guy, right?
yeah,
I don't even know. I mean, some of the Christians are like, no, actually, God's in charge of hell, because it doesn't make sense that God has like this nemesis, and then he gives people to this nemesis to torment forever.
yeah. It's a weird system that obviously like yeah, it came out of like Roman mythology and other mythologies, and it's just this weird mix of, I don't know how, yeah, because the Old Testament really doesn't talk about hell. It's just in the New Testament they're like, oh yeah, we figured this thing out, and and yeah, it's just, you know,
Seems like
when
it's post New Testament that like hell became a thing. It
oh
was like
yeah,
Dante, like
yeah,
Bart Ehrman had an entire book about this. How like when the early Christians pretty much thought of hell like the Jews did, where it's like you just don't exist anymore.
yeah,
You kind of wander around like, and not like being tortured forever. That was a Christian thing.
yeah.
They came later that evolved, strangely enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny too how I was talking about how the church evolved over time to have these certain views and stuff like that, and or a lot of it is social evolution too, of like how to keep people in the pews, and like so much of what is preached isn't about like we're following the Bible, we're following tradition because this has worked for, you know, the last 100 years or the last 300 years or whatever, and so putting the fear of hell into people has worked. But, yeah.
So you have some upcoming like show topics that they're working on for future episodes. What are some that like you're excited about? And you talked about kind of Mormonism. There's a bunch to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Like, I'm working on a video right now, tentatively about just kind of how, just why we have this view that, why a lot of people have this view that like atheists are just angry and how dismissive that is. And so I'm kind of trying to pull that through, and the fact that like whenever somebody's an atheist in a movie, even like a mainstream movie, there's always like this horrible backstory about how, you know, their dog died the same day as their grandma died, and they realized that no God would allow that to happen or something like that. It's never like, oh, I just, you know, over time kind of decided to think for myself or whatever. It's always like this horror story, and just like the way the media paints kind of atheism and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's what I'm exploring now, and it might become something completely different, but that's where it's at now. And yeah, we did an episode. We recorded an episode that's coming out next week. What did we even record on? We just did it. Here, one sec. Oh yeah. We did a sequel to our preacher scandal one, where some YouTuber commented like, oh, you could do a full new episode since this one came out of preacher scandals. And I was like, oh, that's a very good idea. So
just preacher scandals in general, or like one in
yeah,
particular? There's a bunch.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's a bunch. So we talked about like Carl Lentz. That's
every like month there's a new one. Like there was some guy who was like talking about like women need to be in shape and all that, and like he got in trouble. And
yeah.
And the guy, Saitin Bruggencate, who was like this famous apologist, and then he got in trouble because he apparently was having sex with a woman. Oh no!
Yeah, yeah. It's well, I mean, yeah. So much of that too is that like purity culture, sex is bad, and so you don't know how to explore your own sexuality, and then you become a creep who's in charge of a bunch of people's spiritual journey. Like it's, yeah.
No, there are plenty of people making a living off of YouTube who are like, yeah, this purity culture, and then they get married, and it's like, yeah, what's your love like now that it's like okay by God, when it's been a bad thing your whole life and now it's okay? It's like there's got to be issues about that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there is. I mean, yeah.
You mentioned that you wouldn't do like reviews of PureFlix movies since like God Awful Movies has kind of cornered that market, but have you had ones that you've seen that you wanted to talk about, or you're like, oh gosh, do we have to talk about this?
Well, I rage quit most of them. I did watch
something about how like they have like there's an upcoming movie where like John Ratzenberger from like Cheers was like an angel coming down. And I don't remember exactly, but it's like they can get good actors and they can get like decent production values, but it still seems like the writing never quite works out. Like, I wonder what that is.
And that one is basically, I don't know if you've seen the Nicolas Cage movie. What was it called? Where he goes, his life changes and he's all of a sudden it's called Family Man. I was going to say he's all of a sudden a family man, but yeah, he's a family man. But that's basically that PureFlix movie is the same exact plot, but with Jesus. So yeah, but one movie I did see when I was researching for the PureFlix movie was what was it called? Marriage Retreat. Yeah, Marriage Retreat, because the mainstream one is Couples Retreat, and then the PureFlix version is Marriage Retreat, and it's supposed to be a comedy, but I didn't know where the laughs were supposed to be. Yeah,
you see them, or at least you see the reviews. The thing about the god awful movies is like I don't always listen to it because it's like I just don't know if I could actually watch the movie they're talking about, and it's just it's tough. Like I want to at least enjoy it, or to be some kind of escape. Like I don't want to get mad about it. I mean, even though they're trying to sell some kind of lifestyle, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, even like, did you ever listen to How Did This Get Made? Where they just, like the Paul Scheer and then Jason Mantzoukas, where they review bad movies. They did a live taping at Just for Laughs in Toronto, and so me and some friends went and we watched this movie for it called Governor Gabby, and it was hard to get through. Like it's just sometimes with bad movies, if they hit that threshold of like this is like way too bad to be bad, so bad it's good. Like this is just really tough to watch. A lot of those PureFlix movies are like that.
Yeah, there's certain movies that have entertainment value, and there's some that are just you can't handle it. But so when you want to kind of get away from this, it's kind of a hobby, kind of a second job you do. Mm-hmm. What is something that you do to get away from it all, other than hanging out with the cat?
Yeah, pretty much just hanging out with the cat. I love cooking. That's kind of the main one. Cooking or.
Do you make poutine?
Yes, I make a really good poutine. I'm not even going to lie.
Poutine there's nothing not to like. The only thing about poutine is like, I like crisp French fries. So if you're going to put something liquid on it, you better eat it right away.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, because I make my fries what I'll do is like when I'm making lunch during the day, I'll fry up all the fries in the deep fryer. Put them in the fridge, and then that night I'm refrying them to make them like super crispy, and then make the really good gravy and cheese curds. Like you have to have like the squeaky cheese curds. It's very important. But yeah, no, I make a good poutine. I'll show you some pictures.
I believe that. I believe that you could have an episode on like believe it or not, poutine. The episode that could be good. Okay, well, unless there's something else you wanted to cover, let people know where to track down your content.
Oh, yeah. So on YouTube, under Believe It or Not is where you'll find pretty much everything. Or you can go to Believe It or Not podcast.wordpress.com. And I should have had this all ready to go. And then on Twitter, Believe It or Not, and podcast. And same with Instagram. It's all on the things. But yeah, if you go to Believe It or Not podcast.wordpress.com, we'll have all the links there and all that stuff, and youtube.com. Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Trevor, for coming on, and go Blue Jays, right?
Yeah, go Jays, I guess. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Glad to have